Well, thank you all so much for being here and welcome. My name is Jessica Olson. I'm with the Valley Air District, and we are so grateful to have you all here today. I'm just going to briefly share the screen that has the simplified, shortened version of our agenda today. And if someone from my team can also drop in the larger agenda into the chat, which is available in both English and Spanish, and hopefully folks who requested the hard copy materials got the hard copy we sent a few days ago before this meeting. So today is our first pesticide subcommittee. I want to thank all of you, especially our co-leads and some of the leadership on the CSC, including Gustavo Aguirre Sr., Gustavo Aguirre Jr., and Bianca Santoyo for really leading us to this moment. I know this has been a big ask and we're really excited for today's agenda. The agenda was developed by a lot of different folks and really with the support from all of the folks I just mentioned, and then several folks that I'll introduce here in a moment during the welcome and our brief discussion about the subcommittee's goals. Then we're going to go and pass it off to the Department of Pesticide Regulation to talk a bit about roles and responsibilities. We thought this was a good way to kind of start off our pesticide subcommittee by just sort of reminding ourselves what we've talked about really over the past year and a half about who's in charge of what. That way, as we move forward and hear from different agencies and different community members, we can understand who to direct questions and comments to and how to move forward with next steps with the various agencies and different folks who have different responsibilities. We also wanted to make sure, since it was a big ask from you all, that we saved time to talk about any updates to the statewide notification system development. So we will have time today. And then finally, we know that there's more than just these two things on your minds when it comes to pesticides. And we do have a proposed schedule for the next several meetings that will hit on all of the pesticide measures that you have all included in your SERP. And so we will review that schedule with you all and get feedback and talk about next steps toward the end of the meeting. And then of course, any other questions or comments we're happy to take. We did make that typically we have hour-long subcommittees, but knowing this is our first one, we wanted to provide ample time. So I'll just start with thanking you all for taking extra time to be here. Right now, I'm just going to turn it over to a couple of intros. And what I'm going to do, just to really drive home how this is such a collaborative effort just for this measure, I'm going to kind of mention each group that helped us prepare today's agenda. And if those folks, maybe one person from that group can introduce themselves and the other folks from their agency that are joining them today, that will help give the residents and the CSC members a little sense of how many folks are involved. But I will start with passing it really quickly to Gus Jr. and Bianca to introduce themselves because they really are the co-leads for this process. So Gus, I don't know if you want to go first and then Bianca.
Sure, and thank you so much, and I'll keep it short. Happy that we're finally having this subcommittee meeting on pesticides. Obviously, pesticide was something that was very important to the subcommittees and the residents, so happy to be here.
Thank you, Gus. And then Bianca.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I don't know if you could hear me, but so we are very excited about this happening. We did have this in Shafter, but now we have all the key players. And the other one, it was just the air district. And now that we have everybody on the table, I think it's very important. We do have a lot of things to address. I know it's an open dialogue because of what the SERP mentioned, and we are ready. I know that yesterday when I prepped with residents, they were happy about this action item, and now that we have it available for an open dialogue, I think it's going to help out a lot of the pesticide portions that we're having in Arvin and Lamont, but possibly could address in Chapter 2.
Thank you, Bianca. And that's an important reminder. Something we'll mention at the end is the nexus between this subcommittee and another subcommittee in Chapter and how we can proceed forward together. So we will talk about that at the end of this meeting. So right now I'm going to pass it to just really quickly to DPR to introduce themselves. You can either individually do it, or I don't know if Min, you just want to let us know who from your team is on the call.
Sure, I think it's probably easier for me to just go over everybody, but once again, my name is Min Pham. I am the Chief for Environmental Monitoring here at DPR, so happy to be a part of the conversation through not only here, but multiple other AB 617 communities. I'm joined by two of my supervisor and managers here. So Mazir Canalos, he is the overseer and manager of the AIR program. And then Anyala Barant, who is the AIR program supervisor who specializes in air monitoring and mitigation measures. I think do we have any of the other staff? I don't think we do, but typically you'll actually have two other staff that kind of float in and out of our in and out of our meetings. You may have seen them.
Hello.
Sarah. Hi.
Oh, sorry.
So yeah, so that's us. So happy to be a part of it.
Thank you. We are also joined today by some of our colleagues at OEHA. So maybe I'll pass it to Lily.
Hi, I'm Lily. I am actually the only OEHA colleague today. So I am the community air protection toxicologist that helps with implementation of AB 617 statewide. So I've worked with a lot of folks here in different capacities for different communities, but some overlapping faces. So that's really nice to see. And just also have established good working relationships with a lot of people here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Lily. As always, of course, we have support from across a variety of different departments at CARB, or the California Air Resources Board. So I don't know, mostly because I see her on camera right now. I don't know, Deldi, can you just describe briefly kind of the types of folks we have from CARB on the call today?
Absolutely. And I would like to ask everyone who's at this meeting today from CARB, if you could at least briefly show your camera so everyone can see your face and wave. Hey, everyone, and please go ahead and rename yourself to put your division in spelled out. Like Ken Stroud, for example, is here. He's a senior manager in CARB's monitoring and laboratory division. We also have quite a few staff from our Office of Community Air Protection. Chief Michelle Byers, who I hope you all know by now is the community liaison. And so other folks we normally have someone from enforcement. I don't think we do this time, but in general, I'll just say that CARB is your partner. CARB is also a sister agency to the Department of Pesticide Regulation. We are both part of Cal EPA, and we're very happy to be here and be part of these conversations with you.
Thank you, Deldi. I see Bianca rose her hand. It sounds like maybe we're having a little bit of trouble. Bianca, can you help us out?
I have two members that have been calling me, letting me know that they're not able to access the phone line. I don't know if it's open or not.
The Zoom call line?
Yes, or it's a 1-888 number. Can't remember what's the last ones.
Hey, Bianca, this is Zong with the Valley Air District. So they should be able to call, but let me know. I can contact you directly. But let them know that if they call in through the 88 number, they can only listen in on the English. So let them know that if maybe that might be the issue if they're looking for Spanish.
They're looking for the one in Spanish. Is it available or?
So just like our regular CSC meetings, it's only available because the Zoom doesn't let us have a call in Spanish line. It's available just via the Zoom link. I will say, Bianca, we are recording this in English and Spanish. So if they are able to at some point get on, just like a normal CSC meeting, whatever they've missed will be recorded in Spanish, and we'd love to have them call in. We also, if they are able to call in when it does come time to just make some public comments, even if they do call into the English one, if you're able to help them out, we will be able to hear them if they're able to log in.
I gave them the new number, but I was wondering, will they open the Spanish one? or we could,
That's not available on Zoom because of the interpretation.
okay, then I might have to contact you later on because they need a device for a login.
Okay, yes, please. Thank you all for your patience, and thank you, Bianca,
Yeah.
for helping folks. We really appreciate it. I just wanted to, I didn't on my end introduce kind of just generally who's on the team from my end. So I'll just say that we have several folks from, maybe I'll have the outreach department folks raise their hand from the Valley Air District. We have Heather and Zong and Maricela. We have Eric Salas, who's on my team, on the community strategies team. And then we do have Ryan Hayashi. I'd be super remiss if he didn't get a second to kind of speak. So Ryan, I don't know if you want to say a couple welcoming remarks as well.
No, just we understand that how much of this is a priority for the Community Steering Committee was voiced during the SERP development, and just want to thank all of the participants, and really want to thank all the partner agencies for agreeing to participate in this important process and working with all of you to help to understand and address the concerns that residents have. And so just looking forward to all of the work that we're going to do together and move this forward. So happy to be here today. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Ryan. And then finally, one of our other agency partners that's with us today is the Kern County Ag Commissioner. So Glenn, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself as well.
Just that I'm Glenn Fankhauser from the Kern County Department of Agriculture.
Thank you, Glenn. So all of these folks, just so you know, including the co-leads and a variety of other folks, helped us create today's agenda and really kind of that we're having moving forward that we will share again at the end of the meeting. So really briefly, what we're going to do is I will drop in the chat here really quickly, since we definitely want to get to the meat of the agenda, the link directly to the part of the SERP that describes all of the pesticide commitments. We definitely, because there's so many, don't have time to go over every single commitment in every single meeting. You heard all of the various folks just at the agency level that are involved. So just to give you sort of the breadth of all of the pesticides commitments that are in your SERP, which includes notification, it includes discussions about sustainable management and reducing pesticide exposure. It includes discussions about future monitoring efforts and a variety of other asks that you all put into the SERP through really a lot of iterations, right? It took us months and months based on all of your feedback and the feedback from all of the folks you just heard from. So with that, because we have so many folks that you just heard from today, we thought it made sense to start with a description and a reminder of the roles and responsibilities of all of the different agencies that are involved in pesticide application or management or even monitoring or tracking. And so I will pass it to Min, who I know not only will help us understand the roles and responsibilities, but I'm sure will be grateful for your questions. I'm the one helping kind of facilitate today. So please, if you can raise your hand, we'll pause and take questions maybe after Min provides this update. But we're also translating, as with every meeting, all of your questions and comments in the chat. So if you feel more comfortable typing your question, I'll make sure that Min hears that as well. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Min, and in the meantime, I will drop into the chat just for you to remind yourself all of the pesticide commitments that we're going to be discussing kind of from here on out. So with that, I'll pass it to Min. Thank you.
Thanks, Jess. So I put together a couple of slides just kind of help us kind of push the conversation along. Some of it old, some of it new, some of it you guys may have seen before, but really just want to kind of have the other agencies jump in if there's anything that I may be missing or something from your guys' vantage point, so that we can have kind of more of a cohesive conversation about all this stuff. And you would think that after years of doing presentations, I'd be able to pull up my presentation, but give me 1 second. Did that work? You guys see a presentation there?
Yes.
Is that pretty green leaves? Okay.
Yeah, you see it.
Okay, great. So so yeah, once again, this is kind of from DPR's vantage point on things. So I want to kind of go over some stuff for us internally on our role as far as like where we fit in with the state, with the federal government, and with the counties, and then also within the within the realm of AB 617. If it changes, there we go. So just some background, I think I've shared this before, but pesticide regulation is essentially broken up into multiple tiers of kind of responsibilities and authorities. Wanted to touch on just a couple of these things, stuff. So there's a federal registration process for all pesticide products. It's approved for U.S. use. Just because it's approved for U.S. use doesn't mean that it's approved for California use. That's where we step in. But every product that's being registered goes through an evaluation process where information about the product, studies about various different effects from it for both the crop, the environment, or human health is all assessed in that. And essentially how the federal government deals with everything is you'll always hear the label is the law, and everything that's on the label is how it's processed and has to be adhered by. A little bit different when it comes into the state. There's going to be a secondary registration process. So like I mentioned before, not everything that is approved for US use is approved for California use. So for us, and more specific, my team, we actually look very, very strictly at California conditions and how it affects things like surface water, groundwater, and in this case, air. So we'll either ask for additional data that we need, or you will take a look at available data and do things like work on computer modeling to see if it fits in with the realm of what's happening here with the state. We'll take a look if we have additional localized data. The air monitoring network is a big proponent of that. We take a look at things that come off from not only just that, which is a long-term study, but stuff for field studies or collaborations with researchers and UC systems to kind of inform our regulatory our registration of that product. And then within that, we have other things like we'll work with CARB here on development of proper statewide regulations that kind of span both of us, whether it be restricted materials, toxic air contaminants. We also work closely with the county ag commissioners on how this is implemented, how it works for them in their counties. And then we also have a pretty robust worker exposure and illness program here, where they will track any adverse effects to workers or field handlers. And that group takes a lot of responsibility of updating annually if there's anything going on. They actually do quite a bit of outreach as far as working with the workers themselves and giving them education, or just knowledge that maybe they wouldn't be privy to, and really making sure that their voices are heard in the grand scheme of all this as well. Because I think sometimes people working out there just aren't privy to the laws that govern them. So moving on to the county, as I mentioned, we work really closely with Glenn here in Kern County. So with this, they will review and approve restricted materials applications. That's a big thing that we do here. So if it's a restricted material, they have to go through a process to check off all the boxes and make sure that it's correct. A couple of things that are key to that is if there are like buffer zones or additional mitigation measures that are specific to the region, they are able to. Oh, I'm getting some feedback, sorry. There are some, whatever localized conditions are in play, they can make sure that it's accounted for in their evaluation. They're actually one of the they're actually one of the more active county ag commissioner groups. So they do quite a lot with if any type of they're not complaint, I guess I'll just say complaints. If any kind of complaints or any kind of incidents, incidents come in, their team is the first one on the ground to be able to go out there and check And they will collaborate with us quite a bit on various things that happen in the region. They also do quite a bit of the reporting for us. So within this county, they'll do pesticide use reporting. So everything that is used, how it's used, for the most part, is put into a database. California is actually one of the only places that does a whole kind of aggregated database of use in the state. So we'll kind of know within different regions what's used, how it's used, what crop is being used, depending on what the pesticide is. So there's quite a bit of tracking that goes on from multiple entities here. So, and they're also they're also the connection between the growers, applicators, and the residents, right? They're like I mentioned, they're the first to respond, and they're always, from my experience, they've been pretty readily available for staff and for schools and whatnot. And then, there's going to be the growers and applicators who also have a role in this, right? They are the people doing the work, and so they are subject to all three tiers of rules and regulations. So, their biggest thing is to ensure that the surroundings are safe, whether it be schools, additional growers, or neighboring areas, residents, and whatnot. We typically call these like sensitive sites. Yeah, so that's kind of the background holistically from our side. And then kind of going into the roles with DPR, and feel free to Deldy, anybody else to jump in. But essentially, with the focus of this, not only this steering committee, but like with all of them, we're here to provide updates and inform about opportunities for contributions to development or amendment of rules and regulations, right? We are a state agency, so we have to do, we don't do localized rules. It's usually a statewide thing that we put out there. Some of those things I'll talk about later, is the statewide notification, the 13D reg. So we're here, and we typically will hear the concerns of the residents here, provide any data that we have from our side to inform decision-making from all the entities here, and go from there. In collaboration with OEHA, we'll work to evaluate potential community risks, whether it be health impacts across the region, and we'll take a look at air monitoring data and kind of help facilitate like how that fits into thresholds and whatnot. With the county ag commissioners, obviously we assist in determining pesticide exposure and risks at all times. I didn't put carbon here because it would take up the entire page, but we do work quite a bit with Deldy's group, Ken's group, and quite a bit of the team there to, whether have discussions on how air monitoring can be done. We ping each other all the time professionally to collaborate with, what's the best approach to certain things in different communities. Should we be targeting X or Y? I think a lot of this also is like resource driven. So like if they've helped us out in doing monitoring and vice versa, we've kind of used each other's labs as well. And a lot of, just knowledge just back and forth. So to inform decision making, we do quite a bit of, collaboration, not only within the realm of AB 617, but throughout. We touch on things like toxic air contaminants, the VOC emissions, like all those things are part of an ongoing conversation and collaboration with not only CARB, but all of our sister agencies in Cal EPA. So that's the roles part of it. I don't know, Jess, Deldy, but Lily, I don't know if you guys want to jump in on any of your side of things, but I can kind of pause here before I go into some other stuff.
I think it's helpful to note that while we do intersect in some areas, there are challenges with intersecting in all the areas. So for our role, OEHA's role with DPR in this space, help develop guidance values, health guidance values, that it was kind of noted. Some of the chemicals, pesticides, we have subacute values for, and that's a DPR value. And then OEHA develops acute and chronic reference exposure levels. So some values might seem like they're off, but they're actually for different purposes. And so I just wanted to add that. So if it kind of comes up, that's one reason why maybe that helps explain.
Thanks, Lily. That's a good flag.
Hi, this is Ken Stroud. I'm with CARB's Monitoring and Laboratory Division. And just add on to what Min and Lily had said is that we've been working with DPR to monitor pesticides since the 1980s. And so we've done a lot of studies over the years, which has allowed us to develop sampling and analytical methods for probably about 30 different pesticides. And certainly the pesticides that are in greatest use in California and those with the potential hazard to human health. So we have a lot of experience to draw on for this community.
One other thing I did want to flag that I can only speak for DPR. DPR treats all the AB 617 communities as one ability to kind of have lessons learned from different communities all over the place. So one of the things I do want to echo is, with our work in Shafter or Fresno up north here in the Bay, we've learned various lessons that we've kind of implemented in different areas throughout the different steering communities. So, this group specifically has given us a couple of things. The other group that's closely associated with Shafter also has given us kind of opportunities that we're looking at, right? Like I think a lot of this is we're learning as we go, and we're trying to address several questions and several concerns. And initially we weren't. I will clearly say that we weren't prepared for it, but I think through all the work that we've collaborated on and done together, I think we've come a long way. So I will want to echo that the effort that's been done with all the staffs here.
And maybe if folks have questions, definitely, I'm just going to add something here, but please raise your hand or put something in the chat. I just want to thank Min for that great overview. I know you have a few other things to share, but I just want to also, something Min just said reminded me. Min just said they weren't prepared for certain, sometimes the questions come and there's just like, maybe the question is really in depth, or it's about a specific study or about a specific rulemaking. And so one of the things I know that the folks that are on this call have done really well, we've had folks allow us to prepare by giving us questions ahead of time. So certainly, even if you don't have a question right now, you're ready to raise your hand. If at any point on this call or leading up to our next subcommittee meeting, you had a question that you didn't feel was addressed, or you have a question that's just maybe a really in-depth question about something someone said, let us know as soon as you think of the question, and it will help us prepare to answer you, perhaps with a presentation or just with a more in-depth answer than we might have been able to do in real time. So definitely don't feel discouraged if you feel like your question is too big. We'd still love to hear it, and we can always get back to you. So I just wanted to let you all know that I think we've done that throughout this SERP process. I know we've had lots of great in-depth answers from DPR and CARB and Ag Commissioner, all in written form that we've posted. We are still open to doing all of that. So I just wanted to remind everyone. With that, I don't see any hands raised, Min. So I don't know, before we transition to the next piece, I don't know if you had more to share about roles and responsibilities.
No, that's basically it. I just kind of wanted to open it up to kind of, I know that it gets kind of murky sometimes with who does what, but I think we're kind of all in it together. So just wanted everybody to kind of step in to see if I missed anything here.
I see Gustavo's hand. Gustavo, please.
I just want to express it. I heard a writer, my favorite book writer, John C. Maxwell, in terms of leadership development. He was sharing a story of, they went to something, something new for a kid, and the kid said, "Gosh." And here I think, gosh, we are rich, so many agencies here, so we are rich, and my hope is that moving forward we'll have a honest and frank and open conversations. My hope is trying to understand each other, my hope is that the agencies try to hear and understand our concern, the community's concern, and trying to find and really evaluate any idea that we may bring that is not normally being implemented, but I think that's what the 617 is, looking for other ways how to reduce the pollution. So thank you to all the agencies, and just keep doing the right thing. So at the end of this project, we can say thank you again for everything that you will contribute to our community.
Thank you, Gustavo. I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the work that you've done to get us here as well. Bianca.
Hi, I wanted to address a little bit of what Ming was presenting on his presentation, what kind of roles each other have, but I was wondering, is there a possibility that he could also elaborate a lot of the cross collaboration that each one has to do with each other? Because I know that every state agency or local agency has their own jurisdiction, but where do all those agencies tie their own work? I'm thinking like for pesticide, I know that there's the exposure, and when it becomes into a gas, it turns into the jurisdiction of CARB, and all those key pieces that I think the community could benefit if we understand when a pesticide is applied, who has what jurisdiction. That piece is important, so we can know who do we have to address this problem or issue, or maybe even an informational. I know that this is going to be a subcommittee and we could elaborate a little bit longer, but I was wondering if we could have that presentation. I know that we have Del D, we have people from CARB, we have people from the ag commissioner, we have people from DPR, we even have people from the air district. So I was wondering if we could one day maybe elaborate a lot of whose jurisdiction is what piece when things do happen.
If I might ask some clarifying questions, unless that was clear. I just want to make sure, because I think what you said is really important, Bianca, and that I think Min just went over by agency what the responsibility is, but you're asking maybe we have like a practical visual that says from rulemaking to application to like emissions and exposure, who's in charge of which piece of one full like life cycle of applying pesticides. And I think that could maybe be a really nice way to put visually everything Min just described. So Min, I don't know if that made sense, or if even you have a verbal sort of, I think what I heard from Min is that there's the rulemaking on pesticides and how they can be used on the state level. So that's definitely a DPR thing. I think that's really interrelated, it sounds like, to OEHA and some exposure. There's obviously some application and notice of application and all of that I think is related to DPR and the ag commissioner is what I heard. So just kind of that whole life cycle, maybe just spelled out a little differently. Is that, Bianca, what you're asking for?
Yes, because I know that I believe it was in the agenda who or the SERP that who has responsibility if there's an exposure, things like that. Who can we reach out? I know that the air district is accessible if we do have any issues, but I was wondering if we have a kind of a training of what could happen in certain circumstances, or who can we reach out if there was a a drift, or can remember the word. If there was a drift, who can we reach out? Is DPR going to be available?
Right.
The ag commissioner, kind of that information, that whole background information, because I know that pesticide is a big part of this area. It's surrounded by agriculture, but we want to know what key players are in each department so we could know who to reach out.
Go ahead, Min, please. I think you unmuted.
Yeah, I can go over a few of these things, and Bianca, correct me if I misunderstand your question. To answer the last part first, in the event of any type of firsthand exposure, or if you think there's a drift issue, the county ag commissioner is probably the first person you should contact. We also have the Caspier app, which will contact both us and the local air district. I'm sorry, not the air district, the county ag commissioners, depending on where you are, where the site is. I know sometimes the boundaries of things will get kind of messy. But we have an enforcement team that does investigations as well. I know Glenn has a full staff that does inspections, incidents, complaints, all that stuff. Like they have to, anything that comes in, there's documentation of how it was dealt with or if any follow-up needs to be done. So I think that's the first part. I think when we're talking about the initial question about cross collaboration, and anybody else can help jump in if you'd like here. But when I think an example that I'll give is rulemaking. Rulemaking isn't developed in a vacuum. When we're doing this, it starts off with what my team does, which is continuous evaluation, right? So the identification of a problem, whether it be, we've got incident reports, air monitoring, whatever it may be. We start with that, and then from there we look at all the aspects internally that we have control over, whether that be use reports, registration, mitigation measures, how, we'll look at how things are applied, when they're applied, in what conditions they are, and we'll work hand in hand with the county ag commissioners to get follow-up information. Within the rulemaking realm, we also do have quite a bit of interaction with the OEHA group when it comes to health hazard issues. If you look at DPR's work, we have what's called a risk characterization document. So we have toxicologists that will go through and look at the risks associated to a pesticide, and they do that in collaboration with OEHA to identify, and I apologize, I am not a toxicologist, so I cannot even get into the details of it, but they will work through all the nuances of, how a product is exposed, if a worker handles it a certain way, what are the risks? So that comes out in a risk characterization document. And then we have what's called a risk management document, which then, our risk management directive, RMD, which is then where we go in and we say, okay, we've identified a problem, whether it be environmental or health, and my team will step in and say, what do we need to do to make, if possible, make it able to be used, like whether that be limiting the quantity, limiting area around, being only applied with a certain condition or certain application. That's where we'll step in and we'll do that work. The rulemaking process also incorporates all other avenues where we have to collaborate with CARB. We have to collaborate with the air districts. We collaborate with the county ag commissioners. The California Department of Food and Agriculture is in the conversation. Who else is in there? I'm missing one person, and they're going to be very mad when they find out I missed them. But Mazir, Vaniela, if I miss somebody, let me know. But yeah, there's always talks, because a regulation isn't by itself just us. Like there's so many far-reaching aspects amongst the different agencies that we have to collaborate. We have to see what the secondary effects are. We have to see if there's things that are unforeseen, for example. So yeah, I mean, I know Glenn and a couple of other ag commissioners were also in this conversation because they were the first ones on the ground, so they know, what specifically is going on in their county. So they let us know what general practices are. So when we're developing these mitigations, we're not just making things up. I tell people all the time, when we do modeling, it looks great on a computer, but if you're implementing in real life, it may not work at all. Like, so that's where all our teams kind of leverage off of each other and kind of identify different things. I know I've had extended conversations with Chandon and Ken on like air monitoring. What can we do? Like, how have you guys done it? How should we do it? Like, what are the pressures that you're getting? So a lot of different people interact. And then not to mention at the end of it all, there's a huge public comment section. So when we're actually noticing these regulations, the residents of California throughout are having an opportunity to jump in. So it could be, I shouldn't say just residents, but it could be farmers, growers, the chemists, the actual people that register their products. It could be advocate groups, like everybody's voice is heard and kind of compiled into our decision making. So I think when we're talking about like whose authority is what, it's not as clean because it is quite collaborative across the board. Deldy, Ryan, am I off base on that? You, Lily? I don't know.
I think that's right, Min. I see some other folks with hands up, but I just want to make a couple points. One, the reason CARB is involved at all is because there's a certain subset of air pollutants known as hazardous air pollutants, or in California, toxic air contaminants that are also industrial pesticides, right? And Bianca, I think earlier you made a comment about like, oh, if something's in the gas phase, then that's CARB. That's actually not quite right. There are pesticides that are used in gaseous phase that are actually regulated by the local ag commissioner when they are being applied. It is when those pesticides that are also deemed to be toxic air contaminants that fall out of pesticidal use, they're no longer in pesticidal use, then that scenario is where CARB would have jurisdiction, right? But it again is pretty limited. And I think that's right. This whole topic would be a really good conversation if we could have some more visuals and some more conversation around some examples and show where the different agencies come in with their authorities. And then
oh, go ahead, Dolly.
I was just going to say one more agency that we might want to think about, Min, and we can talk about this, is the federal piece, US EPA's Region 9 office. They also have a role in some of this. And, we may not want to invite them to be part of the subcommittee, but we may want to invite them to come and be part of a conversation occasionally to help us all better understand what their role is.
What I wrote down as an action item from everything we just discussed was a resource that we can all work on as agencies and co-leads together to help answer all of this, because it sounds like it is overlapping and a little complicated, and we can put that on another agenda. And I think Bianca, for her question, it sounds like it was warranted, right? Because there are a lot of overlaps. Thank you, Gustavo and Lily, for being so patient. Gustavo, I'll go to you.
Yeah, well, I think I had also the same reaction trying to ask the question that Bianca asked, but I refrained because I started working with CRP 2006, specifically advocating for pesticide protection in our communities, and from during this time, I learned that it is too complicated trying to explain each piece that each of your agency do around pesticides. And I was thinking maybe the best way moving forward is after we identify some actions or needs or data that we may need, the steering committee will want to understand better, review, maybe at that time asking the question, who are the agencies that have jurisdiction on this topic that we want to move or talk about it. And then at that time, identify which agency can make a contribution. I think that will be easier because I think even if you give us a full presentation on which of the agencies do what around pesticides, will it still be very complicated? Because I think better than us, and I think with most of your agencies from time to time, we enter in some conversations on why you are not doing so and so, and you say, no, that's not my jurisdiction. It's aerosol, is before applying it, is one agency, after it was applied, after, the fumes are, developed, is another agency. So I think to me is very complicated. Maybe the best way also maybe for the use of our time is as we develop those actions or discussions, who are the agencies that can make a contribution to make things happen. So that's one of my ideas. And I think for a training that Bianca asked, actually last night we had a meeting with residents, the steering committee members. And I think one of the areas that we wanted to ask as part of today's meeting was, I think the last column on the pesticide piece, it says that engage with the CSCs and the community on enforcement procedures, including complaints, and bullet points is to provide clear steps and process on how to report illegal applications. I think the bullets 1 and 3, to make it short, we would like for I think DPR is the agency in charge of this part, so maybe doing a training on those the bullets 1 and 3. And I don't know if it's here in this subcommittee or in the regular monthly meeting, but that's one of the, I think, immediate actions that we'll wanted to ask, you know, in this meeting. But this that's in terms of, you know, what is already there. So those are a couple of my initial ideas, but I think, as I mentioned, it may be better if we identify, you know, those activities or conversations, and then asking which agency can contribute to what. Thanks.
Gustavo, I just wrote down your concept as something maybe the next meeting or soon after that is a topic. I think that's important, and it sounds like it's a high priority discussion topic. So thank you. I'll go to Lily.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to share a little bit of context as a toxicologist that OEHA as an agency is a risk assessment agency. So while we provide support in terms of like why a chemical might be toxic or how much or those kind of contextual questions, it's not always possible for risk management agencies such as CARB or DPR or others to enforce like what would be scientifically the best, most protective amount, because while we have certain knowledge, we don't have all the knowledge. So this is where the modeling, for example, done by CARB or DPR is helpful in conjunction with what scientists can find in, you know, different types of studies such as animals or human epidemiological studies. So that's where these agencies working together to try to piece what we know and then figure out by models and other means what might be happening. The regulations and just biology don't always sync well together, because we all know we start as infants and as elderly, and along the way we're exposed to anything and, you know, everything. And for certain regulations, it's hard to pinpoint a specific chemical to a specific health effect. And so with that, we understand in the scientific community, this is a challenge that we want to address, and trying to actually do that is challenged at best. But we do have the screening tools like Helen Virus Screen, which aren't always helpful because of the time differences and getting past data to be helpful for future protective data. And so this is where the different iterations of, as science advances, we try to keep up and do the best with what regulatory policies are asking of communities and health protection in that space.
I think a really important reminder and distinction, Lily, and I appreciate the clarification. I've written down a couple of action items. One is to have some sort of resource for folks just generally. We will be posting the slides that Min shared, which I think is a lot of the sort of who does what, but then also something maybe a little more visual we can all work on together will be a resource. I've also written down, and I think Gustavo nailed it, in that each time we have a topic, let's maybe just make sure we identify on the agenda and during the discussion who is in charge of addressing sort of that action item and topic. I think that makes a lot of sense. And then I've also written down that, and I even just put it in a slide that we'll share at the end, the potential for whether it's the next meeting or however some of the co-leads want to help design our next agenda, is discussing the important high-level piece of reporting you know, complaints or issues that folks see and who to respond to. That is such an important real-time discussion. So I appreciate that comment as well. Any other questions about roles and responsibilities? Maybe I'll ask that we put in the chat or reserve to the end. We do have another topic, because it was such a high priority and we wanted to make sure folks were still engaged. We do also have DPR on deck to talk a bit about the statewide notification development. And so if you do have other questions, like I said, no question is too big. If anything, we appreciate the big questions coming now. It will help us prepare. So please put them in the chat, save them to the end, and I will pass it back to Min to talk about the statewide notification.
All right, let me know when the slides are back up. We good? Okay. All right. So as just mentioned, it's me again. So I'll be talking about the statewide notification, providing a little bit of an update here. So some background. So for those that don't know, there was a lot of public expressed interest in a notification system to allow for advanced warnings of pesticide applications. You know, a lot of this stemmed from the Shafter community group and some other localized groups as well. But we were able to secure funding and resources to kind of get things up and going. So about 10 million initially was put into the development of a notification system. This has, again, as I mentioned before, has a lot to do with our collaboration with the county agricultural commissioners, because they have quite a bit of the data that is useful for us in how we can track this. So what came about, we're you know, instead of just going out and just doing the rulemaking on how we intended to do it, or just kind of using our own voices, we solicited the county ag commissioners to do a pilot project. So what that entailed was we got four regions to help us kind of develop platform and kind of go through kind of some of the growing pains of what a notification system looks like. You know, when you initially, just in layman's, when you're saying notify me of a pesticide use, what does that mean? Like, we had to get down really to granularly, like, what does that mean? What can we do? What data is available? What is useful? Because the last thing we need is for, let's say, your email or your phone to just have, you know, 50 something notifications during the day, and none of it actually has to do with any kind of health risks. So hearing all that, we did pilot the four areas. So that would be Riverside County, Santa Cruz County, Stanislaus County, and Ventura County. So as you can see here, the launch date for the system to be up and running is 2024. So we are actually on pace, about a year out, to we're on pace now to actually start a regulatory process. So they're gathering some final information from the pilot study. So the four county ag commissioners, the data that came in from that system, and that's going to start. They're going to start kind of mapping that into both a regulatory package, which will have all the language associated to it, but much more importantly, the backbone of what the system is, like the technology that we need to kind of get it in place. So like I said, it's about a year out, 2024, beginning of 2024, January 2024 is the expected implementation of our system to go live statewide. Right here, the community engagement that's ongoing. I think this is where I have spoken several times in past meetings about how to engage and kind of be a part of the conversation. So there was convening of focus groups in August of 2021. There was workshops online throughout the end of last year and middle of this year, so November and June of this year. So the next big one is the workshop, the actual workshop that's going to be happening in November this coming November. This is where a finalized proposal of the system, the designs, and the initiation of the rulemaking will take place. So I don't have that date and time on hand, but once I get that, I'm going to pass it on and get everybody that information. Within that, as I kind of mentioned before, when we do any kind of regulatory or rulemaking process, there is a component of comment or a comment period. So, you know, the public and various stakeholders are encouraged to be a part of that. So if there are things that you would like to see or comments you want to make about the existing system, if any of you had the opportunity to try out any of the pilots, this is an opportunity to kind of get your feedback in there. I know that each of the counties have also solicited feedback, and I'll kind of go into a little bit more on what some of the end results of that are. So,
Min, I see a question in the chat, but I think you're about to go into the county by county details. So maybe we'll wait until that and then we can address.
sure. Yeah, sorry, I can't see any of the chat right now.
No, it's okay. I'm just, I'll just let Bianca know. We'll address it after your next few slides.
Yeah. And if it's on the slide, I'm more than happy to talk about it. So, so updates on the pilot project itself. So as I mentioned, all Stanislaus, Santa Cruz, and Ventura County are still underway. Riverside has completed their pilot, and all the counties are still soliciting input. So jump onto their website. I'm happy to drop that into the chat, or Mazir, if you're able to drop it in the chat for how to contact each county specifically. Jump in there and provide them feedback. You still have some time to play with the Stanislaus, Santa Cruz, and Ventura ones. As I mentioned, Riverside, they're done and they've wrapped up their study. So one of the big components that we're waiting for is a third-party evaluation. So all the pilot projects are being evaluated by the Center of Regional Change at the University of California, Davis. So UC Davis will be evaluating each one of the county's systems and kind of providing recommendations and input into how we need to move forward with our rulemaking and the impacts of that. So I just wanted to jump into some of the key things that we've heard thus far. Again, I apologize. I'm not directly involved with the pesticide notification system itself. I was in the beginning, and it became, when they got money, they became a whole different system. But yeah, some of the things that we're looking at is, questions that have come up on, what pesticides should be included in the notification system. So I am so sorry. A bunch of stuff just like popped up on my screen. So with, there's many proposed elements for this, but I think the initial looking, I think everybody's kind of landed on probably, it looks like restricted materials, which are potentially prioritizing those first because those may have the greatest impact on health. So the system is geared towards that initially. Language access, we've heard quite a bit that the system needs to be Spanish and English, but we're not, although we are prioritizing both of those languages, I think we're also looking at many other languages across the state. There's quite a bit of other languages that are being used in the farming area. So we'll do our best to do that and really consider the feasibility of other languages as we kind of move on, but we are dedicated to implementing a Spanish and English system off the bat. Another question about advance notice. There's been several discussions in different arenas about how much time prior to, let's say, an application or prior to an event should information be available. So we had to actually look to see how our internal systems are made up to ensure that we could get it in a timely manner. We understand that there's different things like there's grower flexibility. So sometimes they put in notices that they don't actually use based on changing conditions, or if the county ag commissioner steps in and says, we need additional time to review notices or whatnot. So there's many things, but I think we're still targeting a minimum of 24-hour notice. And I think everybody's more or less on board with that. User privacy, this was a thing. So some of the systems required, or actually all the system initially required, I guess, a registration process where you would actually put in your information, your personal information, including your name, physical address, email, and telephone number. And that was a means to getting the information out to those individuals that were interested in the different notification systems. As we kind of had more and more conversation, it seemed like people didn't want to have that, wanted to have the flexibility of just kind of maybe pointing and clicking on a map or something. So the system, there's a couple of systems being built by DPR that we piloted that we took a step back and we said, could we do a system where you just put in a California address and kind of go from there, almost like a Google search? I think that's the easiest comparison, like a Google search, and then it'll pop up a region around the address that you have there. So without having to put in your own personal information. So that's one of the systems that's being evaluated now as well. Again, all these things are piloted throughout the the 4 communities right now. So if you've had any chance to try it, would love to get your input on it. And I know the counties are wanting to solicit input as well. So please jump onto their website if you could. I think that more or less wraps it up for the notification portion. And I think I did that on purpose so I can answer specific questions. So I'll close this window out and we'll go from there.
We do have 2 hands raised, so we'll start with Bianca.
I have a question in regards to the pilots that they do have in place right now. There's been conversations myself with other communities like Stanislaus that year, maybe a couple years before, the person that's in charge, the organizer there, she did a PR request of how many pesticides were used in the area where the pilot's at. And she said that there was maybe a 65 to 75% diminish of pesticide reduction, which is kind of concerning. Is it because of the pilot being in place at the moment that the Ag Commission is not approving restricted materials, which their pilot, that's what it is? I don't know if you kind of understand my question, and I see means, yeah.
Yeah, I get. So for Stanislaus specific, sorry, I'll answer this really quickly. For Stanislaus specifically, it's centered around the community of Grayson, and we had pulled. Our team was actually the one that pulled information for that area. So we didn't see any trends that were like not unheard of. I think there may be some crop rotation that happens in that area that may contribute to some specific uses. You know, one of the things is if they've planted 1,3-D for almonds, for example, you wouldn't touch that plot for another 20 years. So maybe like something like that could happen, but we didn't see any kind of trending that would lead us to believe that an abnormal number of applications were not being processed, but we can definitely dig into that for you.
And it also happened in Ventura County. When we see that there's high numbers at the end of the year of pesticides being exposed for residents, and in these couple months that for Ventura it rolled out, we noticed that there's a trend of less pesticide exposure. And even though this is a time frame for restricted material to be used in the area, now we're seeing a less exposure or less notification for restricted material. That was just a concerning fact that I do have for the pilots that are happening. And I wanted to address on the Riverside one, has DPR started a report of what happened in Riverside, or you're waiting for all the counties to finish to give back to us what really happened in the Riverside County? Why did it finish so quickly while in other counties it's taking a little bit longer for the pilot to continue working?
Sure. So to address the question about, let me see, Ventura County. Again, that's we pulled the data for, I think was it Nayland Acres is the community that they're in. So specifically for that area, we didn't necessarily see anything that was abnormal, but we can definitely take a look at it again. It'd be, something like to say that restricted materials weren't being approved because of this. We would be able to see. And I think it would actually raise a flag with our third party evaluation as well. So with UC Davis kind of being part of that evaluation, and they're going to be the first one that does the report. So they're going to actually be working in concurrence with us once they've collected information to put out a report for themselves, and then we'll kind of follow up with our end of it. But to answer your question, I think UC Davis is going to essentially be working with these groups as data becomes available. And I know there's different pressures within different counties for, and I can't speak specifically on Riverside ending, I know that some of the key aspects of what they were testing for were they were able to get that information a lot faster. So without boring everybody, it's a lot of backbone work. Like it's a lot of the infrastructure and kind of how data is flowed in and out. So I think Ruben, the CAC there, was able to get the information he needed, and it essentially satisfied what they were looking to do with their collaboration and their notification system. But yeah, that's the only information I have out of that. And again, the UC Davis group will have a comprehensive report once they're able to dig into everybody's work.
Thanks, Min. And
I have another question. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead,
Bianca.
Jessica.
I was just gonna say, it sounds like, Min, something you said struck me, and it's I think we have it on our draft upcoming agenda, just kind of schedule, is that it's obvious that year to year pesticide application is different. It's not necessarily uniform year after year, so it's possible there's that. I also think something that's important, and Min, can you remind us, when this is a statewide system that's developed, I mean, it will be in place. It's not going to be pilot. It's not going to be only certain times a year. It will be all the time, right? So at some point, this will happen for every county all the time, kind of regardless of the kind of the differences we've seen this particular year in pesticide applications. Eventually, it will hit sort of the full rotation.
Yeah, absolutely. When the rulemaking takes place, it'll be statewide, and it'll be on the books 365 days every year. So we're not gonna target any specific timing or region or anything like that. I just know from our work specifically, because of the modeling that we have to do, we do look at high use seasons or typical crop rotations, and it's just a part of the agriculture scene that we take into account. That's why when we look at data across the board, we typically look at it in spans of like 5 or 10 years just to get a better idea of what's happening. I think Riverside actually even started before everybody else, so I think they may have gotten everything they needed on board as pretty quickly. So yeah.
Thanks, Min. And then I do have Gustavo's hand, and then maybe we go back to you, Bianca, if you had a further question.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm not sure if the way I understood the agenda is we're going to be able to cover it, but few things just to mention for your notes, maybe Jessica, if we are not able to cover all of them. Pesticide notification is one of the goals that we identify with the committee members in this subcommittee. How can we influence the best possible notification system statewide? So that's one of the areas that I think the members want to see, the outcome, one of the outcomes of this subcommittee. The other one is the monitoring, the monitoring projects, and I can explain more after that. And the third one is improving the buffer zones, the protections. There is at least one county that have a little bit better protections than Kern County. So those are the three main areas, going through the monitoring process, coming up with projects that will reduce the exposure to the community. So, and in terms of the notification, what Mint was sharing, few comments that we gathered last night from residents is, we know that Kern County have a voluntary project. Actually, I think it may be both. What is called, if I'm correct, is Spray Safe and grower-to-grower notification. And I think the question was raised last night if the Ag Commissioner, Glenn, shared these projects with DPR. And I think for us, it will be good if maybe in the following meeting, Glenn can maybe share it with us, like something similar to what Mint did, some slides explaining to us how safe, Spray Safe works and grower to grower. I think our intention is, are there like those two projects, can those in whole be maybe added to DPR notification, or are there pieces of those two projects that can be used, to improve the state notification project? So those are some of the requests, I will say. And the other one, is if the Ag Commissioner have any other contributions. I think that the Ag Commissioner, the Kern County can do to improve the state notifications, or like two specific projects that they have, and if he have any other activities or things that he can share with us, maybe to advocate statewide, for the state notification.
So I'm gonna try to work backwards. I have some. Sorry, there was a lot of there, Gustavo. So I'll try. So as far as Glenn, and he could step in and make additional comments, but yeah, his grower-to-grower network, we actually asked about initially. So between this and the initial schools notification that I believe Riverside had, we pulled all those in to look at as far as kind of examples on how to move forward. But I will say that they kind of call for different things. So I think although it was useful to get some of the examples that Glenn used for Kern County, we had to actually put in additional thing to fit the needs of the community. Right? We heard things from Shafter, we heard things from here, we heard things from the different work groups that fell outside of what the grower-to-grower ability to do. So I will say that, and Glenn, happy to have you step in if you want to there. Spray safe, I think between him and our group, we can probably have some conversation about how to display that work as well, because I know some of my team here also does work on that, but I saw Glenn unmute, so I'll stop real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obvious that that the initial pilot project that we started close to 15 years ago, obviously that provided the main backbone, both for the push for public notification as well as for a template for DPR to want to use. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I didn't feel like there was a need to do another pilot, because we still have that ongoing, and DPR can use all the data that we have from that kind of as a template for public notification. And as far as spray safe, I don't know that there's specifically anything that spray safe could offer a notification system, because it's kind of just it's a general safe practices, best practices type of thing that is just supposed to increase communication. It's supposed to bring together the applicators with the farm workers, with the farmers all together, so that they are able to make changes to applications while they're happening in the field, and do the things that are smartest from their perspective, so that they prevent any kind of drift incidents at all. And Kern County had the first spray safe, but I think it's multiplied into at least 10 to 15 other counties have their own spray safe programs now.
Thank you, Min and Glenn. One of the things I noted to Gustavo's point, or I should say two extra things I've noted, was just the need at future meetings, which again, we'll share a slide that I think outlines most of what Gustavo said, but to talk about monitoring and really all of the other commitments. We've only talked about essentially one of like 7 or 8 commitments in the SERP tonight. And so I appreciate Gustavo reminding us that there's so much more out there. I think some of what he just mentioned and what Glenn and Min just mentioned, we can continue to provide updates on how they are integrated with the SERP commitments themselves. And when I see you unmuted, so I'll pass back to you, Gustavo, but then I'll also share my slide, which hopefully helps people feel at ease with our, kind of path forward, which will not be comprehensive. I'll just caveat it there, but it will sort of outline at least the next handful of meetings of topics we can dive into.
Yeah, I think just one more thing. I believe I think in terms of monitoring, we were reviewing, and I think that's what you may be reviewing with us. Jessica, I'm sorry for jumping ahead. But I think one thing, initial next step that we identify is the first one, in which it says, that on the actions, that it will be identified the use of the pesticide use in Arvin, Lamont, and that DPR, will gather, that pesticide use and provide a report to the group. I think that's the first piece that we saw, like, okay, getting the pesticide use, the data, and then sharing with us. To us, that looks like the first step. And then I think the follow-on will be a WIHA with us identifying. So to me, it's like several steps. But the first step, I think, is getting the data of pesticide use on 617, here. And I don't know if it's possible maybe to have that data. I think DPR is responsible, the party responsible for this, to gather this data. Working with the Ag Commissioner, obviously, maybe if you can have that data, maybe for the next meeting, and start moving the monitoring process.
Yes, I'm going to share a slide, but Min, go ahead. Maybe when I share my slides, if you could talk a little bit about what Gustavo just mentioned, because I feel like he was reading our minds. I know Gustavo was a part of setting this agenda, but we were hoping to give ourselves all the time to gather information for the next few meetings, to do almost exactly what you just said, Gustavo. And so Min, if you can talk a little bit about kind of that one action item, the very first action item of understanding pesticide use in Arvin.
Yeah, so this is actually something that we shared with the community in January of this year. So there was a slide deck that I think it was me. I think I presented on that really called out, the team really dove in and looked at the boundaries for Arvin, Lamont, and kind of looked at what was in the area. Actually, Jess, can I show this real quick? There's some chunks that I think this might answer Gustavo real quick. So do you mind if I share this?
Go ahead. Yes.
If I learn how to share correctly. Okay, let's see. Please share. There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, so this was part of the slide deck that we provided. So we identified basically everything that was used here. As I mentioned, in different increments, whether it be 1, 5, 10 years. And we looked at, it looks like 35% here is what we call MITC, but the precursors are metam sodium, metam potassium, diazimate, whatnot. Sulfur, mineral oil, 1,3-D makes up 9%. So this has been typically the general numbers that were here. And we've had this conversation with CARB staff as well to help them put together, what they want to do next as far as looking at different chemicals and kind of providing more feedback on what we're able to do. So like I said, we've had a history in Arvin, Lamont doing, in collaboration with CARB, doing seasonal monitoring. So we're pretty well versed to the things in your area. And I think we made the recommendation of targeting the MITC and the 1,3-D, since they were, they are fumigants. We have laboratory methodology for them. And we have the expertise amongst the different BDOs on doing air monitoring for that. So, and we also provided a few things here, just heat maps specifically to the MITC here, and with the 1,3-D here. So, take a look at that and then happy to answer more questions, because I know that was something that we've had conversations about before.
Thanks, Min. And what we'll do is, knowing that we had a lot of action items, I think we'll send a follow-up to everyone. So there's so much to track today, but we'll be sure to link this presentation. We have about 7 minutes. We have 4 hands raised. I know that Lily and Shandon, I believe, have a lot to add because it is really collaborative what the question just was. So I'll pass to Lily. Shandon, we'll see that Gustavo's question got answered, go to him, then Bianca, and then maybe try to wrap up and put a pin in anything we need to discuss at the next meeting. So go ahead.
I'll keep it quick. I just wanted to share that in the experience now of working for the SERP development in Eastern Coachella, that OEHA takes in the other environmental context as well. So I recognize pesticides is not the only pollution source in Arvin, Lamont. And so, for example, with Eastern Coachella, I did recommend different ideas with the Salton Sea in that community being a potential factor. But here's where the biology of exposure and what can be monitored and all that complexity of we don't have all the tools that we need to answer all the questions, that I just wanted to flag that, keeping in mind this is a pesticide subcommittee, that there might be like refinery concerns, but that within this subcommittee or this space that maybe another conversation about your other pollution sources might be relevant.
Thank you, Lily. Good reminder. Go ahead, Shandon.
Yeah, hi folks, Chandan Mishra here with the OCAP Corp. So yeah, Gustavo, like definitely cognizant of your need for usage data. And actually we worked with like Min's group earlier this year for ECV, the Eastern Coachella Valley SERP pesticide effort. So I think this is something that's still like really fresh in a lot of our minds for Min as well as Ken Stroud, in the monitoring group. So, we can definitely like bring like that usage data and start diving into the discussion. So again, want to keep it short, but looking forward to like additional discussions in future meetings.
And Gustavo, I'll pass to you. Do you mind if I share that schedule on the screen while you ask your question?
Yeah, just I think very brief. It looks like you have been doing already some actions on some of these. Maybe if you can maybe give us an update in the next meeting, like the action that you are taking, because looks like you are already advancing that, and maybe just share with us where you are. Maybe we may be already on the evaluating potential community health risk impacts. So maybe an update next meeting where you are. Looks like that may help us see where we are and where we
really
may be the next steps.
Great reminder, Gustavo. That brings me to something that we will start a tracker for the entire SERP, but this is a good reminder that sort of we almost have like multiple things within just this one measure that we can start tracking and, like you said, checking the box and feeling really accomplished. So I think that's a great idea. All right, Bianca, please, your turn.
I was wondering, I don't know if Min did answer the question in regards to the material that is used around the boundaries. Is it a restricted material, or is it just pesticides in general that are not harming, or that do need permission from the Ag Commissioner to allow to spray? I did want to elaborate a little bit on what Gustavo mentioned, that there's a lot of projects that DPR is doing to protect a lot of the health in the area. Is the Ag Commissioner going to help out in implementing those projects, or how much is the Ag Commissioner participating? Let's just say for like the statewide notification, how much is his involvement now that DPR is rolling out these projects, and possibly in the future use it here in the Kern County area? Is the Ag Commissioner going to be participating in it, or is it going to take some time for them to actually roll it out in the county area? I think that I also wanted to ask the Ag Commissioner, what is the difference between the grower to grower and the beekeeper notification that he has in the area? Is there a big difference, or is it something similar? Because if there's a big difference, maybe the DPR could use it either or, what could benefit the community. So I just had those 2 questions or 3 questions.
I guess the quick answer for the first part is MITC and 13D are restricted materials, and because they're fumigants, that's why we were advocating for those, and we'll have expanded conversations in the next meeting also with CARB on it. Sulfur and some of the other things are used in various different platforms. That I think sulfur is mainly a smell complaint. So I will defer to Lily on some of that, but we can get additional information on health implications for the rest of it. But I think when we looked at it, we've identified the priorities being MITC and 13D.
Yeah, the two fumigants, 13D and MITC, are also toxic air contaminants and carcinogens. So that is also, I guess, raising its priority of concern in a way.
Thanks, Min and Lily. I do see that Glenn unmuted. So I do think there was a last part to Bianca's question that was directed at Glenn, as in terms of grower to grower versus the beekeeper notification.
Sure, I would say that the two main differences are one is automatic, the grower to grower, every grower has to participate in that. The beekeeper has to register first, so that's one difference. The other difference is the beekeeper notification is for an area around where they have their bees, whereas the grower to grower notification is only adjacent applications to a grower's field. So those are the two main differences. As far as my participation in the process, if I understand correctly, I've been participating just like every other ag commissioner has in all of the statewide meetings. We talk about this at just about every meeting that we have, whether it be the local commissioner groups or the statewide commissioner groups.
Thanks, Glenn. And then maybe I'll just get a yes, a thumbs up from Min. My understanding is that it is not up to the counties to participate. It will be a regulation. They'll have to, all counties throughout California, once it's a requirement, will have to adopt some sort of, or be a part of the statewide notification program when that is a regulation.
Yeah, for statewide notification, once it's implemented, it will be statewide regardless of county.
Awesome. I'm sure there are maybe more questions after all of that great work. It is 5:30. We have a lot of action items. I think I've repeated them a couple of times. So if you have to hop off, know that this is being recorded. But I will just kind of reiterate that we are planning to provide a resource based on some of the early questions about roles and responsibilities at our next meeting. We are proposing this general draft schedule, knowing it is not comprehensive, but knowing that you are in great hands with lots of co-leads, all of the agencies on this call. And we have been including a few other folks in providing updates or drafting these agendas. And so hopefully all of your questions can be answered at future meetings as well. And just know that we are here for you in between meetings as well. So if there's any question you have, like I mentioned on the top of the meeting, the earlier we get it, the better, because the better answer we could provide. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to thank so many different groups and agencies for being here today. Thank you all for helping launch what I think is the largest pesticide subcommittee we've ever held, and certainly really the first formal subcommittee we've ever had, at least on our end. And I don't know if that's true, you know, for all of you for your first attendance at one. And then remind all of you that we do have a meeting tomorrow night. And so I will probably be tapping our co-leads to help us update the folks that weren't here tonight tomorrow night about some of the great actions that we took today. And then finally, as I promised, we will also start an action tracker just for the actions on this commitment, so folks can see the progress that's already being made and kind of what the next steps are. So with that, I will pass to Gustavo to kind of help with any maybe wrap up or final words and let everyone go tonight. Go ahead.
Yeah, just very quick. I think it was mentioned that we will invite the chapter steering committee members, just to want to be sure that if we need to officially make a decision or just
Yes,
invite them?
thank you for mentioning that. I'm sorry, that was in my notes and I'm glad you said it. That's why I have folks like you, Gustavo. So for those of you that know, or I mentioned it earlier, Shafter also has pesticide commitments, and the commitments in all of the different SERPs related to pesticides are different. The communities are different. The SERPs were developed at different times, but we also know that a lot of the conversations will be about statewide developments. And so our thought in working with the agencies is that when there is a discussion on something that's statewide, so for example, our discussion about sustainable pest management, statewide mitigation efforts, statewide notification development, all of those things are just as relevant to Shafter. So if there's, maybe I'll just say if there's no objections, aside from the meetings that are just Arvin Lamont specific, meaning we're diving into Arvin Lamont inventory and we're diving into the Arvin Lamont commitments, are there any CSC member objections to inviting our colleagues and our residents and our friends and neighbors from Shafter to participate in any of the meetings that are statewide? Meaning, A, this is a public meeting and anyone of course is welcome to come, but we would extend the invitation, let the Shafter folks know what the discussion is about, and invite them to participate. I see Gus Jr.'s hand.
Yeah, I have no objection with that. Actually, invite that, and then I think it would be even useful if we could do like a one pager or a half pager of like the SERP measures and just strictly in pesticide and Shafter, and then in South Kern, and then that way we could see which ones are common, which ones stand out, etc. So just maybe that could be an action item.
Really, really good concept and really good way to track all of the work. I know a few of us work in both groups, so it might be helpful for all of us. I think that's a great kind of positive, collaborative way to end today's meeting. I want to thank you all so much. Huge thanks to Min, who helped provide most of the talking points for today's meeting, but really to all of you, to Gus and Bianca, Gustavo Sr. and everyone who had all of the really interactive questions. Thank you all and have a really great night. See most of you tomorrow night. Have a good one.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. Jess, I'll send over that presentation.